First, I just wanted to acknowledge and say thank you to all the alum who came out for networking night. It was a big event in New York City, and a lot of people got to meet each other in person for the first time instead of on Zoom from this group. So it was really good. And people like Mariah are sending out thank you notes furiously. So hopefully you'll get one from someone. But it was much appreciated. It'll just keep growing from here. Like we were joking, in 20 years, what's the networking night gonna look like? Do we have to build a whole convention around this? I don't know. So we've decided to do something kind of fun tonight that's also educational, and basically we need to like brush up on who behind the scenes people are, because I think a lot of us like think we know editors because we want to do editing, and then we're like, I have no idea who their name, what their name is or something. So Eric is here to basically give us some quizzes and trivia about some of the famous duo editors, director editor duos, and some people that you should know that are really good content creators, and hopefully make them our household names. So Eric, I cannot wait to go through this game that I've already looked through.
Yeah, you can't play. I'm kidding. All right. So yeah, for those that don't know me, I am Eric. I'm a Ithaca 2017 class of 2017 grad, and been working in post-production for the last almost 7 years in various roles, media management, assistant editing, VFX, amateur YouTuber. So yeah, as Shayna said, I am here to present a little fun educational game PowerPoint to play along with. Because we'll start sharing this now.
Everyone get your scorecards out, because
yeah, this is gonna be a tally system just to see how many points you can get for yourself.
Who thinks they're gonna win? All right. One person. We'll see.
All right. Can you see a screen with an editor?
Yep.
Yep.
Cool. All right. So yeah, the name of the game tonight is Editors. Who are they? Because, everyone knows what a film editor is. Anyone that's open Premiere, anyone that's learning post-production in Shayna's class right now, they'll know what an editor kind of is, the kind of tools that they use, but they always know what the film editor is, but they never ask who the film editor is, or at least very rarely do. So tonight is going to be about giving credit where credit's due and just highlighting some special editors that are very world-renowned, as well as some, maybe not so globally known, but you definitely should keep an eye on them on social media or the internet or cinema. So, but before, going into the editors, I think Shayna might have touched on this in her classes from time to time, just that there's different levels of editors. Typically that, when everyone says editor, the person that they think of most is specifically the offline editor. And that's the person actually assembling the final cut of the film. And that person's usually dealing with, low res media, proxies, just to make their lives easier so they can get through it. So that's the editor that everyone knows. But then there's different levels below that editor and different levels offset from it. For example, the assistant editor, which has two different levels, the first assistant editor and the second assistant editor. which the first assistant editor mainly is just managing the cutting room, like just making sure things are where they need to be, that everything's organized, communicating with different departments for getting different files, looking at different reports from set. And sometimes the main editor will also let them do assembly cuts, so like initial rough cuts of certain scenes. The second assistant is the assistant of the assistant, and usually they're going to be involved in organizing bins and syncing footage. And there's media managers, post-production assistants, and dailies, technicians, and these people are usually the ones managing the actual like ingesting and organizing and archiving of the footage. This is actually this was my first job out of college, so I know a little bit about that, especially, as well as being a VFX editor or a VFX assistant editor. And they're basically the same or similar as an assistant editor, but they're specifically tasked for dealing with VFX sequences, and often they will handle temp VFX also before handing them off to vendors. And as well, as we mentioned, there's the offline editor, who's the main editor, and then there are online and finishing editors that assemble the final high-res film. So like the offline meaning the low-res footage, online meaning the high-res footage before it's finally published to the world. And if you want to learn more about the specifics of each of these roles, there's a link on this slide, which we'll share at the end. And yeah, the VFX editor, I made a slide specifically because this is the job that I did for the longest time, but I was specifically a vendor side VFX editor. So we wanted to divvy this up information wise, that there is a client side and there is a vendor side to being a VFX editor. Client side, organizing VFX sequences and bins in the actual edit project, making temps, and then just organizing things for VFX supervisors who will send the footage to the vendors, and then vendor side VFX editors will receive that material, reassemble it, remake it, and then they will conform and process that footage for VFX artists to be something in a usable format. And sometimes they'll run dailies reviews, because that's what we used to do at Fuse Effects, and then prep those final VFX renders to send back to the client-side VFX editor. All right, enough about VFX editors. Game time. So, as I said, this is a keep a point. Every tally is a right answer for yourself, because this is a personal learning experience for everyone. So, first up, in talking about people, does anybody know who this person is and why she's important? I can give you a hint. You might have seen her if you know why you're here for this meeting.
Is it? Wait, I missed the rules at the beginning. Are we just speaking up, or are we doing it by ourselves?
You can raise a hand, or if someone unmutes, they can say it.
Okay, I think this is. I'm gonna get her name wrong too. Thelma Schoonamaker? Schoolamaker?
Wrong.
Okay.
Anybody else want to take a guess before I reveal the answer?
Is it Margaret Booth?
You are correct. This is Margaret Booth, who in history is known as the first cutter in the film industry, in actuality, which really means she's the first editor, because she would physically cut the film. That's how, most film or all films were edited back in the day, was physically cutting film and retaping and redistributing it. And she did that mostly for D.W. Griffith back in the day, who's famous for, as we see, MGM, Beauty and the Bounty. Eventually, when she went full-time with MGM, she actually was a supervising editor for Ben-Hur. She didn't actually cut the film herself, but she did get to supervise for this film. And this one is a certain iconic film in the history of cinema. Sadly, she never won an actual Oscar for her editing work, but she did receive an honorary award for her contributions to editing in history. in the 70s. So, next. Anyone know who this is? I saw Shayna go first, so. But Jack, I see your hand, so.
This is Merch.
This is Walter Murch, who is known for mostly actually more sound editing than picture editing, I would say, but he's notorious in both departments. So he did sound and some picture editing for like the re-release version of Apocalypse Now. He was also the main film editor on Ghost, The English Patient, Talented Mr. Ripley, Tomorrowland, which is not well received as a movie, but not the point. And then he also did a lot of work on The Godfather, mostly in sound, but he did do the picture editing for part 3. Okay, so we have this guy's name here, Michael Kahn, because I figured this might be a little difficult in terms of getting the name. But this is the point where we get to duos and directing duos. Does anybody know who this guy edits for most often?
Steven Spielberg.
Correct. Michael Kahn is, in fact, Steven Spielberg's right-hand man in the editing room. Most notoriously, actually, the first film they ever, or big film at least, that they ever worked on together was Raiders of the Lost Ark, and he's edited all of the Indiana Jones movies, if I recall, as well as The Goonies, Hook, Jurassic Park, Saving Private Ryan, all the way up to The Fabelmans. But he did edit for other movies besides ones directed by Spielberg. So I threw in a couple here that are not Spielberg related, but ones that are either classics or nostalgic for me, at least. Like Casper and the 2003 Peter Pan, I thought was kind of fun. As well as Twister, and I think this is a sequel to Tomb Raider. And then we have Thelma. This is Thelma, Jack. But do you know who Thelma is most often paired with?
I just
Yeah.
know her.
I worked on many of these.
I know some of her filmography. I know it's Lawrence of Arabia. It's probably one of the most famous ones.
Anyone want to take a further guess?
Who do I work with a lot? Come on, Chris.
No one? All right. The answer to who Thelma works with most often is Marty Scorsese. And they have been a dynamic duo for several decades now, starting back at Raging Bull. She edited Goodfellas, Gangs of New York, The Departed, which actually won her Oscar, Hugo, Wolf of Wall Street, and most recently, Killers of the Flower Moon. But some other little juicy tidbits that I learned when putting this presentation together is that Thelma also edited a couple music videos, most notably Michael Jackson's Bad music video, which I thought was really fun. And then Sally Menke, who sadly is not with us anymore, but she was the go-to editor up until she passed away for a certain iconic director. Anyone know?
Josh got it in the chat.
Yeah, Josh got it.
Let me see the chat. Why do I not have the chat open? Correct. Sally was the editor for Quentin Tarantino for many years, up till Inglourious Basterds, which I believe was her last film. But she edited Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs, Jackie Brown, Kill Bill Volumes 1 and 2, and Inglourious Basterds. But just out of curiosity, does anyone know who took over for Tarantino after Sally passed? Okay, I'm gonna flip it over because no one might actually know this. Oh, actually, no. Before we get to that, this one I wanted to throw a little bonus tidbit for Sally, or shout out for Sally, because she edited the live action Ninja Turtles movie back in the 90s, which holds a special place for me. So I wanted to give a little shout out to that. And this is a good example of like why it's important to give credit where credit's due and recognize some you know, iconography with some of these editors. But the person that took over for Tarantino films is Fred Raskin. So, and Fred was actually one of the assistant editors for Sally back in the day, mainly Kill Bill Volume 2, I think. And then he ended up taking over as the main editor for Tarantino. So he got to work on Django Unchained, Hateful Eight, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. However, there is another director that Fred is paired with other than Quentin. Can anybody take a guess? Nate, you got it. James Gunn. Yeah, so Fred edits for James Gunn, who directed, all the Guardians movies, Suicide Squad, the good one, I will say, and Peacemaker, which is a great show. So anything that James Gunn has done, for the most part, has been Fred's work editorial-wise. Now, here's a special one. If anybody knows the names of these three editors, or the franchise that they ended up saving, feel free to comment or speak. Jacob is correct in which franchise. They are responsible for saving Star Wars, because George, in his initial edit, was very rough. And then these three came to save the day. And there's a whole video about this on YouTube, which I linked to right here and at the end of the presentation. Does anybody know the names of these three editors, though, out of curiosity? You'll learn in a sec, but I want to see if anyone knows. All right. Silence means no one knows the name specifically. So the first one, and probably the biggest help, was Marsha Lucas, who, spoiler, was the wife of George Lucas. They unfortunately are divorced, but back in the day, she was very notorious for being in the editorial department for all his films. So all three Star Wars original movies to some extent, especially the first one, though. American Graffiti, George's first film, THX 1138. She also helped a little bit on Taxi Driver, from what I researched. I don't know much in terms of her involvement. But she was one of three. Oh, thank you for pointing that out, Shane. I actually did not know that. It didn't list.
Oh, I have no idea. I was making a joke.
Oh, yeah, no, it wasn't. She wasn't involved in that. And then this
Oh,
is
you
Richard.
see what happens when you get divorced? You make
This is
that.
That's true. And then this is Richard Chu, who also was involved in the editorial department. I think he was only involved in the first one, though, from the research I saw. But he did go on to edit a few classics, such as Risky Business, which I don't know how many of you remember Risky Business, or you might at least know the iconic scene of Risky Business of Tom Cruise dancing in his underwear to old-time rock and roll. And then Shanghai Noon with Jackie Chan and Owen Wilson, he was also the editor for. So consider that some classic 2000s fun. And then Paul Hirsch, and he was around for the first two of the original trilogy, but he also went on to do a lot of editing for Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Mission Impossible, Footloose, and then among the recent stuff, it looked like there was Warcraft, which, again, give or take the quality of the movie, but impressive VFX at least. And fun fact, I'm actually Facebook friends with Paul Hirsch. Okay, Kurt Baxter and Angus Wall. Do you know who this duo is usually named with?
Fincher.
Correct, Jack. So, for the most part, it's actually more Kurt than Angus, but Angus was involved in Social Network and Dragon Tattoo for the most part. But these two have been very involved with a lot of David Fincher projects. So, Benjamin Button, Social Network, Girl with Dragon Tattoo, Gone Girl, Mindhunter, and a ton more involving Fincher. And then this is Margaret Siskel. Can anyone name who she is known for pairing up with? Jacob, you are correct, but do you know who that husband is? Do you have a name for him?
No.
Oop, I just saw the good guess, Chris, but Jason got it correct. It is George Miller, who most people will know for Mad Max Fury Road, but he was also the director of Happy Feet back in the day, and then most recently his film 3,000 Years of Longing, which I don't know what the quality is. I haven't seen it, but George is the husband of Margaret, and they have been a duo for the longest time. And she was actually reluctant to do editing for Mad Max, but her husband convinced her, and she won the Oscar for editing, so, you know, she has someone to thank. And then Eddie Hamilton. And this one, I'll give you one hint, is that who he's associated with now is not so much a director, but perhaps more an actor.
Wait, what was that hint again?
What was the hint?
You said associated
it's
with
not
an
that
actor?
yeah, it's an actor that he's been more associated with recently. So not a director necessarily. Jacob is correct. Jacob, you better not be looking up answers on the internet. But that is correct. Eddie Hamilton has been most recently, kind of in a Duolingo with Tom Cruise. Not saying like they actually are working directly together, but a lot of the films that Eddie has been editing recently have been Tom Cruise movies, because he edited Top Gun Maverick and the most recent Mission Impossible movies, which he's currently working on Dead Reckoning Part 2 at the moment. But I also got to give Eddie some love for the Kingsman movies, because I adore the first one, at least. And also, if you look up his stuff on the internet, especially like on Instagram or YouTube, you'll find interviews with him where he shows off his timelines for all the various movies. So they can get quite extensive. And that's the main bulk of that game. But I did want to shout out a few more editors that people should know about in history or currently for some cool work that they've done. So Tom Constantino is an editor that I follow online, mainly because his work on the Orville has been very good work. And he's actually also a producer on the show now, and he's very active on social media. So if you ask him a question, he might get back, but there's also interviews with him about editing the show, so he's a good resource. And then one Spielberg movie that was not a Michael Kahn edit was E.T., and that was actually edited by Carol Littleton here. And then Lawrence Jordan, who I don't know necessarily if you know like the big features or the big projects that he's done, maybe because they might not be considered all that great, but I'll get to why he's important later. Although I do guilty pleasure kind of like the Jack Frost movie, even though it's a little creepy. And then Paul Rogers, who edited Everything Everywhere All at Once, which, my God, that movie is so good. And for those that have seen it, that movie has quite extensive editing and effects, of course, but the editing is quite nuts in that movie. So you got to give Paul some huge credit with that. And then Ryan Spears, who is most associated now with Saturday Night Live, specifically like doing the SNL shorts that get directed. So like not the live stuff, but like the stuff that gets pre-edited into like little short films. One recent example is the I'm Just Pete, which is Pete Davidson's parody of I'm Just Ken from Barbie, as well as the Pedro Pascal Mario Kart video from a few months ago. This was all Ryan involved, all directed by Mike Diva, also, who is a notorious YouTube artist and director. And Lawrence, before I mentioned a reason that it would be good to follow him is because him and another editor or assistant editor, Richard Sanchez, actually created a website and whole like master program course called Master the Workflow, which goes through the entire process of being in the editorial department on a Hollywood level production. So how to use Avid, script sync, bins, all the paperwork that's needed to be an assistant editor and to get your foot in the editorial industry. So, and these two work together on a Netflix feature titled Naked, which is a Marlon Wayans project. I haven't seen it truthfully, but these two, when working on that, they then decided to put this program together of Master the Workflow, and it's really cool. I highly recommend it for those that are looking to get into big project type of editing work. Which Richard, I'm going to talk about quickly because he's also a good resource in terms of learning editorial from an assistant editing standpoint, and is a VFX editor because he has done both recently. As an assistant editor, he has done Suicide Squad, which, not the greatest movie, but it is something cool nonetheless, as well as Naked that I mentioned before. The I think it was 2019 Robin Hood. And then he was a VFX editor on the last Bill and Ted movie, She-Hulk, and the Ahsoka series that just came out recently. So he has quite an extensive knowledge when it comes to Avid workflows. Yes, if you do Google that, Jacob, you will find those search results. And then another assistant editor and VFX editor that I thought was worth giving attention to is Kent Blocher, or Blocker. I'm not actually sure how that's pronounced. But
Blocker.
Shayna Blocker. Okay, cool. Yeah, Shayna made me a little bit more aware of Kent here, and I decided to look up his filmography, and he has quite an extensive filmography. As an assistant editor, he did that for Zoolander, Cinderella Man, Black Swan, and then recent projects as a VFX editor. He worked on the most recent live-action Little Mermaid, Gemini Man, and Mary Poppins Returns. So, give a nice shout out to him. And then I actually went through and I actually found this link to the top grossing assistant editors, which I thought was really interesting because it kind of makes you aware of like specifically assistant editors that you might want to follow. So Richard is one of them. He's not in the link, but I thought this was still worth mentioning that Richard's a good resource for learning assistant editing and editorial workflows in general. And then Robin Boudet, who is pictured right here, he is the assistant editor for pretty much every Marvel Cinematic Universe project for the last decade. So he is quite up there. I think he's like the highest grossing assistant editor right now because of the fact that he works for Marvel. And then there's also Sean Abrahamian, if I pronounced that correctly, which I don't have a picture of, unfortunately, and Ben Stringfellow, who is this guy right here with the interesting hair and glasses. But they both worked on the most recent Avatar movie, The Way of Water, and then they each got to tag onto some interesting but kind of controversial projects like The Last Jedi and The Flash. And then someone that's not in the link here, but also worth mentioning, is Hillary Wills, because she was, for the longest time, the assistant editor for The Orville, the Seth MacFarlane show that I mentioned. Tom Constantino was the main editor for, but Hillary now has actually graduated from being just an assistant editor to being a full-time main editor. She actually got to edit a lot of the episodes for season 3 of The Orville. And most recently, she got to be an editor for a couple episodes of Gen V on Amazon, which I thought was pretty cool. So yeah, check out this link for sure to see other names of assistant editors, because they need love too, And then before we mentioned finishing and online editors, I didn't have a big extensive list, unfortunately, because it's very niche that you have to go through IMDb to get as many names as I could. But a couple that I figure I'd highlight are actually friends of Shayna's, believe it or not. There is Samantha Uber, who currently, Shayna, you said she works at Picture Shop, or was her most recent gig?
Yes, she is at Picture Shop.
And then Chad Schumerhorn, who works at Company 3 still, right? Or has he moved on?
He is at
elsewhere?
Company 3 LA, remotely in New York.
Got it. But yeah, they are the ones that do the final touches, putting everything into the online, the high res final assembly of the film before it gets released. And I'm just also showing the softwares that they more than likely use, like Samantha using Flame, because she's more notorious for using Flame, which I also put a link up here to an article about her being a finishing editor at Deluxe back in the day. So Flame is a very powerful conform and VFX tool, one of the originals actually. And then DaVinci Resolve, which Chad has actually shown us some workflows back in the day of how he does his online editing on certain projects. Because he's worked on stuff like a lot of recent Marvel movies, some Star Wars movies. So, give them some love, especially for Shayna. Which, speaking of tools of editing, now I've decided to put a mini quiz here on the different tools, not just people, but tools of editing. So I figured, let's see if anyone knows what these are.
Many of you should know.
I'm gonna get it wrong. And it's gonna be worse. Pretty sure the one on the right is a Moverola or something like that. I'm pronouncing that incorrectly.
That is correct. You are
Okay.
pronouncing it incorrectly.
Yes. Moverola? No.
Did you say the one on the right, Jack?
Sorry, the one on the left.
Yes, the one on the left is
Yes.
the Moviola.
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 Anybody know what the one on the right is before I
The one on the
reveal?
right's killing me. I definitely know it. I've looked it up before.
What do you like to sleep on?
I mean, it's a bed, but I'm trying to remember
Okay.
specifically.
And is it
I mean, there's kind of like
How do I give a hint?
there's kind of two answers, but they're
Yeah,
really the same
I
idea.
think I'm confusing it with like the brand name because there was like one company that made them all that everyone used.
Mhm.
Mariah just
Oh.
watched a video on this a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I guess I'll reveal the answer now since people are struggling. But
I
as
mean,
Jack said, the
Max watched a video on this 2 years ago, so I'm sure he remembers.
excellent guess, Chris. 1.0. Excellent. But actual answers are yes, Jack, you were correct on the Moviola on the left. And then the one on the right is the Steenbeck/Chem.
Flatbed.
Yeah. Yeah, which before the Moviola was like the original like box. It was basically a projector that then like fed the film so that you could see it as you can see pictured with this guy on the right. Like you would have a viewfinder that you would look at the film through, and then you would go through and physically make the cuts with the machinery that was in it. And then this evolved eventually into, I think Steenbeck is specifically the brand, and then Chem is like the actual bed. So, but it's the same idea of like winding through film. So this was considered linear editor, which that's the reason we have the term NLE, non-linear editor, because in digital, you no longer had to be so linear when going through all your dailies. So these are the pre-digital. And then, you know, there's the modern NLEs, which I've listed a whole bunch here. You know, most of them you probably recognize. I don't know if anyone wants to take guesses as to names. This isn't necessarily a quiz question, but see if you all recognize any of these logos. Some are easier than others, though.
I still hate that they changed the colors of their apps to be all the same neutral color.
Yeah.
Oh, tell me the difference between Media Encoder and Premiere. I'll wait.
Those could be the same, but why did they lump in After Effects and no Audition still
Yeah,
green,
character
right?
animator. Mm-hmm.
No,
They're all
Audition
purple.
is the same color now. It's not
Really? Is it
Yeah.
also? God.
I have it on my desktop right now, so
Used to
anything
be
that's audio and
green.
video is the same. It used to be green, but now it's
Hmm.
purple or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Light blue.
Photoshop
As if
and
I can tell the
Illustrator.
difference between light blue and light purple when it's like 20 pixels by 20 pixels on my screen.
Photoshop and
Audition is
Illustrator are
purple,
still
too.
okay, but
Which one do you want us to guess?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, nothing specific. Just like,
That one's Avid.
yes, Avid, Premiere, Final Cut.
Mm-hmm.
One that might not be recognizable to most because no one talks about it is Lightworks, which is obvious here. DaVinci Resolve, which is more of a finishing tool than an editing tool, although I actually use it myself as my own editing tool, as it's free or $300 if you want the pro version, so it's a good deal. There's Sony Vegas, which is this big blue V, which I'm not a big fan of their modern logos. They're really ugly. And then one that's not really known for TV, well, or actually no, it's more known for TV in a different sense, but not for film, is Grass Valley Edius, because this would be what you find in like news stations, like doing live broadcast editing. And that's all the softwares. Of course, the most famous of the softwares when it comes to big productions is Avid. As you can see down here, for example, this is the timeline to Bohemian Rhapsody edited in Avid. And pretty much most, I'm not going to say all, most films are edited in Avid. Which then leads me to a little fun bonus question is, does anybody know there's a certain editor that is known for using Lightworks in their work? Does anybody by any chance know? Would you guys like a hint?
Is that a photo of their movie?
I don't know actually. I don't know which project that is. In the next slides, there will be pictures that are a little more revealing. But does anybody want a hint?
Yes, please.
Jack, you mentioned their name very early on as a guess. Like in the whole presentation. Like in the first question, who was the person?
Oh, yeah. Okay, yes. Excuse me. Okay, I thought it was an yes.
Yeah, Max got it right.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Thelma Schoonmaker is actually known for not editing in Avid. She used his Lightworks. She has used it since Goodfellas, if not sooner. At least once, digital editing became a thing. This was her tool of choice because she used it on Goodfellas, The Departed, which again, she has her Oscar for The Departed, and that's what she used to edit. And even as most recently as Killers of the Flower Moon. So, and as you can see up here, I think this is Wolf of Wall Street specifically, the timeline for. So, evidence. As well as the fact that in this picture of Thelma, you can see Lightworks in the works behind her. But Thelma isn't the only editor to use this. There are actually other features that have used the specific software. A very underdog software. Should I just reveal the names, or does anyone want to guess any that they might know? I have a feeling no one's going to know, though. So, moving on. So, other films that were edited in Lightworks include Pulp Fiction, Batman Forever, Mrs. Doubtfire, 28 Days Later, The King's Speech, Road to Perdition. And this is just a few. There are other films, actually, a lot of surprisingly classic movies that used Lightworks back in the day before Avid really dominated the industry. But this is actually another timeline grab from Thelma of Shutter Island specifically. So Shutter Island is another project that was edited in Lightworks because that's what Thelma likes to use. And I thought, why not throw in some fun stuff in terms of mentioning Premiere? So, some projects include Deadpool, Gone Girl, Everything Everywhere All at Once. So props to Paul for editing a crazy feature like that one in Premiere. There's also Terminator Dark Fate, which these two kind of go hand in hand in terms of which director you might associate that with, which is Tim Miller, because he directed both. And then a little bit of Social Network and Superman Returns. I thought the whole movies were edited with these two, but it was actually more specific workflows. So Social Network, I believe, was for processing dailies, which I think was related to the red footage. And then Superman Returns was for specific capturing, digital capturing they would do in Premiere. But then those movies were edited in other software, which Social Network was Final Cut Pro.
I think Amazing Spider-Man 2 was cut in Premiere. Someone's going to have to fact check me on that, but I think that was also cut.
Yeah, I don't remember that being listed. And then Saturday Night Live, because if you go on to Ryan Spears' Instagram, which is why one of the reasons I recommended checking out Ryan Spears on Instagram is because of the fact that he will share screen grabs of his timelines in Premiere from the Saturday Night Live projects that he's edited and a lot of other non SNL related projects he will also share big timelines for. So, it's worth checking out his Instagram just to learn his craft in terms of how he puts together an edit in Premiere.
Is this a screen grab from an SNL episode?
This one, no. I don't think this one is.
It's giving me anxiety.
I think that's everywhere.
Can they organize it better,
This
please?
one should be everything everywhere all at once. I
Yeah, I've seen that one
I
before.
was gonna say that is a 2-minute digital short.
think.
It's saying that Avatar was edited in Premiere.
No way. No way.
It's
Premiere
saying
was
that.
Premiere was used, but it was not the main tool. Avid, I believe, was the main tool, but there were other programs like Premiere and Autodesk Smoke, I think. That I remember a long time ago researching, like, oh, they use this, but it was like for very specific like VFX workflows, I think, or for specific capturing workflows.
Yeah, it's saying they did it to see the flow from shot to shot. I don't know what that means.
Probably to see it like in more like real time raw footage, maybe because Premiere could handle that while Avid struggles a little bit. But anyway. And then, you know, figure why not throw in some Final Cut Pro, which I'm kind of curious. Does anyone know any feature films? I actually just mentioned one, so there's one giveaway. But any other people know, like back in the day, what feature films might have been edited in Final Cut Pro? Not 10, not this version, but like the original, like Final Cut 7 and beforehand. Well, we'll get to that in just a second, but does anyone want to take a crack at if this is true or not, at least?
Yeah. I
It
think
is
so.
true. Final Cut Pro X was used for some feature film editing work. If you know anything about the history of Final Cut Pro, you know that in 2011, basically, there was the biggest editorial strike against Final Cut Pro, so to say, that they changed everything with version 10 of the software and basically made it look like a ramped up iMovie, and it pissed a lot of editors off, truthfully. So then they jumped ship to Premiere. So like David Fincher movies, for example, and also Coen Brothers movies. Those were all edited in Final Cut Pro 7 back in the day. So Benjamin Button, Social Network, No Country for Old Men. I threw 300 in there because why not? And Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. All those were Final Cut Pro 7 projects. Before Final Cut 10. And actually, I threw Parasite in here because this was in fact edited, even though it came out in 2019, I think. It was edited using Final Cut Pro 7, which is at that point like 10-year-old software, which is just crazy to me. But Final Cut Pro 10 was used for some select editing. And I think I just saw someone, Nate, you are correct that they did do editing for Trailer Park Boys inside of Final Cut Pro. I found that in researching stuff. But some other projects include the feature film Focus with Will Smith and Margot Robbie, as well as this Tina Fey feature film, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. And when I was researching, I also discovered that it sounds like Bo Burnham's Inside, his Netflix special Inside, was edited using Final Cut Pro, because Bo actually did the editing himself, because this was basically a one-man band project, except for some sound and color work, if I recall. So if that's true, it does make sense, ultimately, because Final Cut Pro is accessible, especially if you're a Mac user. And this picture down here actually illustrates that. I think this is Focus specifically, that they did use Final Cut Pro to some extent. And then, of course, like Final Cut Pro 10 gets most associated with like YouTube editing for the most part, because it's a lot more accessible to them. And then there are some shorts here and there, like the Sriracha documentary from Griffin Hammond that was edited in Final Cut 10. So yeah, Final Cut Pro 10 is somewhat Hollywood usable.
before you go to the next slide, I have a trivia. No computers, Jacob. No internet.
I still reject this claim.
Okay. Uh, so the first Academy Awards ceremony was in 1929. So did that have a Best Film Editing Award? And if not, what year was it added? Do not Google.
You said 1929?
1929.
If I remember correctly, no, this is probably wrong. I think they had it for a couple years and then they got rid of it for like a good couple decades and then it came back.
Yeah, I want to guess that it came to full fruition as we know it in like the 50s or 60s.
Yeah.
Anyone else? So you think they had it the first year? 1929?
Maybe not the first year.
Yeah, I don't think they had it the first year. I
No.
imagine that came because like the
So
technical stuff.
what's a guess? What year?
1973.
Wow.
No. I'm actually gonna go 1946.
Okay.
38.
Yeah, I'll say
Okay.
I'll say 35.
Okay.
Price is Right rules.
Yeah.
$1. Okay. So correct answer is 1934 was the
Ah.
first year.
Damn.
I do not see a gap.
Oh. Okay. Maybe I'm thinking of a different award.
Yeah. The first movies to get it was Eskimo, and it was up against Cleopatra and One Night of Love. You know, that one.
Eskimo was a quote unquote documentary film, but it was all staged. So
This one and the documentary ethics, it's frequently cited.
yeah, yes, because it's one of the first docs from what I remember.
Out of the 1930s, a guy named Ralph Dawson won 3 of the awards. So he won it for A Midsummer Night's Dream. Anthony Adverse, don't know what that is. And The Adventures of Robin Hood. So there you go, more trivia. Now, move on.
Where were we? Well, that's basically the end. I figure I'd open it up to the floor to see if anybody else knows any editors that maybe weren't mentioned here, but you think might be worth sharing with the rest of the crowd, so that we all give editors love.
I'm gonna throw in Joe Walker, editor of Dune and Arrival and
Oh,
12 Years a
yes,
Slave.
of course.
Yes.
How did I not include them in here?
Yeah, I was gonna be like, he's one of my favorites.
All day, Eric's like, how did I forget this person? Like he forgot Walter Murch.
I did
Oh,
initially
yeah,
forget
that's
Walter
me.
Murch. That's because I think of him more with sound than editing.
That's true. He
You're
wrote
telling
the
me you
book.
don't have his book on
I
your
was gonna
shelf
say, he
right
wrote the
now
book.
because I have 2 copies.
Yeah, mine's over there on the table.
I want to give a shout out to Jay Rabinowitz, who edited Requiem for a Dream. I and Train Spotting and Pi, apparently. I'm a big fan of those really fast cuts in Requiem for a Dream. So yeah.
I want to give a shout out to Joanna Noggle. I don't know how to say her name, but she has edited most of The Bear And I think that is
Oh.
one of the best edited TV shows out there.
As a
Yeah, I
veteran.
And
saw
she
that.
won an Eddie Award for it. Which apparent is an editorial award.
Mhm.
I want to make a shout out to Roderick Janes, who is Coen Brothers editor, but is not a real person. This is actually the Coen Brothers.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Been nominated for an Oscar too, for Fargo, I think. It would have been awkward if he won.
I'm gonna give a shout out to Gene Ravel, the editor of La Jetée. If anyone's heard of La Jetée,
I don't think I know that one.
it's
You didn't take a Patty class.
it's experimental.
Ah, yeah, I didn't take a Patty class.
And 12 Monkeys, I
Mm.
think, which is based on La Jetée.
Like 35 years apart.
Cool.
Anyone else? If anything else you want to wrap it up with, Eric?
Wait, who is Stanley Kubrick's editor?
Oh, yeah.
Himself, probably. I don't know.
Shout out to Stanley.
Yeah, Kurosawa did his own.
And yeah, that's the end of that. I put some links to some helpful videos about a couple of editors, some notorious moments in editing history, as well as master the workflow. A website called shotonwhat.com that is basically the IMDb of film tech. So you can go through and see, like what cameras production shot with, what editing software was used, what compositing software some companies might have used on certain projects. The link to the top grossing AEs, how Star Wars was saved in the edit. Also a behind the scenes that I found of the Avengers editorial team talking about what it was like to edit the first Avenger movies. The video on Margaret Booth. Richard Sanchez has a 20-minute presentation about being a VFX editor and what that means on the client side, not the vendor side. If you want vendor side, you can reach out to me, which I put my contact info on this slide for those that don't have it. As well as Lawrence Jordan talking about the workflow he had on his Netflix original movie, which Richard, as I mentioned before, was a assistant editor for. So with that, that's the end of the game. If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask.
I
Yeah.
lied. Stanley Kubrick did not edit.
He did. He was like directly controlling most of the edits in his.
That's what I thought. And I thought that's why it took so long for him to do everything. But no. This guy named Ray Lovejoy, who also did Aliens,
Oh,
did Space Odyssey 2001, and Batman.
Sweet. 89.
yeah. I mean, this is one of the big things is that there are so many editors. It's hard to keep track of, but we need to try to be better.
He did The Shining. So it doesn't look like he had like a go-to editor.
How about animation editors?
We can do that next year.
Who edits Pixar?
Let's find out. Sir.
concept of animation editing is weird to me because it's like really done in pre. So like it's like the creative role of editor is already like determined before those shots are rendered out. You know,
I think they have an editorial department though.
they do. Yeah, they do.
Yeah, I think it's Bill Kinder. Kender.
Let's see.
I thought it was mostly for cutting together animatics. Or like
Yeah.
cutting together storyboards to get flow and then
Yeah, I think it is
retweaking
a lot of
animation
that.
before you actually
Correct.
animate it.
Yeah. I was actually an intern at Titmouse and I was in the editorial internship specifically. So I would see the editor actually going through making animatics using storyboards as well as sound bites of the voices that would come in. So like if Tom Kenny came in to record a voice, they would get another character, and they would do like a dialogue edit basically and just get a flow of the edit using the storyboards and the dialogue that was given.
Did you ever get to meet Tom?
No, but I did get to chat with the voice of Jimmy Neutron.
That's pretty good too.
Awesome.
And apparently I was at the same party as Freddie Wong, which was weird.
Wow.
And actually, Jacob, there is a couple of different editors for Pixar. So there is Steven Schaffer, who edited The Good Dinosaur, Incredibles 2, Wall-E, the original Incredibles. There is Lee Unkrich, who edited the first 2 Toy Stories and A Bug's Life and Coco.
Feel like you got to be careful like editing CG because if you edit too much out, then it's like you wasted all this time and money rendering it. It's like it is a weird kind of concept because you're like
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what the animatic is for with the storyboards, is so that you can get a flow of the type of shots you will more than likely need.
But also it's not too far off from shooting coverage for stuff you don't use necessarily because you think you'll need it.
Yeah. Plenty of deleted.
Yeah, I'm sure as
scenes.
budgets have gotten bigger, they can deviate more from their storyboards,
Mhm.
render more than they need, and then have more to play with in Final Cut.
Yeah. There's
Well, it
also
might become more like a VFX editor kind of towards the end. That you're just kind of like replacing with new versions and stuff.
Yep.
Yep.
More of an organizational role.
another aspect related to the presentation tonight is that Jaina was like, what about sound editors? When I was putting this thing together, I'm like, that is a whole other department, whole other niche field that's like, that gets way too in depth, especially because like, you got, all the different editors and artists that get involved. Like there might be a guy going to record and then edit the Foley and then someone doing the dialogue, and it gets crazy. Like there's big teams with that. But yeah, that could be a whole other presentation itself as sound editors.
Well, thank you, Eric.
Thanks, Eric.
No problem.
I had fun. I think Jacob tried to win, but I think Jack won. But I don't know what everyone's private tally was.
I had more than Jack. Just kidding. I think I got 0. I wasn't keeping track once I got like 4 in a row wrong.
I don't know if I get points off for getting them incorrect though. So is it Jeopardy?
Like
No, there's no
Jeopardy.
minus.
No minuses? All right. That probably ended up pretty high up then.
How about for misspellings?
Yeah, I'm terrible at spelling and I can't pronounce it.
Half point.
So, yeah, there you go.
But
Maybe we
not
should
to sound
play.
like a kids soccer coach, but we're all winners tonight because we gained knowledge of the names of editors. You're welcome.
Should have a pop quiz sometime next year. I'll just like put up photos of people and be like, who is this?
Who is that?
Shanna should
And the
end every
person-
meeting with a 5-minute quiz of who is this?
Yeah.
I like it. 2024 is going to be great, everyone.
Up the stakes. Increase the anxiety.
Yeah. In order to get into the meeting, you have to fill out a quiz.